Shalom, giving all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rachachodash, double honors unto the elders and apostles, great millstone of all well. And shalom unto the 144,000 elect men of the nation of Israel and the rest of the elect that are destined to be saved. I'm the brother Kalab, and I am from the GMS UK London Forecasters Camp, coming back at you with another lesson to edify those of which I spoke of. So, in this lesson, I want to give a testimony story of something that happened to me recently, which was very interesting, and I thought it would make a good lesson, so I'm going to go into it now. So I done a video recently, I think it was the last video I did, mentioning how I went to the cinema to watch the Michael Jackson movie, which I thought was pretty good. All things considered, I had a good time. But the interesting thing about that is that I hadn't really been going out very much at all for some time, because unless I absolutely had to, because I'd been unwell and was too exhausted to basically go out unless I absolutely had to. For example, to get food, shopping or whatever, or attending camp. But other than that, I was completely wiped out and exhausted because of various illnesses in the flesh, that I was doing my best to conserve my energy. But the thing is, recently I'd been feeling a lot better, and so I had enough energy. So I decided to go to the cinema to watch this movie, as I said, this Michael Jackson movie. But the thing that I did is that the film was going to start in the evening. I decided to go to an evening show, but this was still in the middle of the day. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to take my time, go outside. The weather's nice. I can have a nice walk and just chill. Take my time, think, about stuff, meditate, and in the evening I'll go to the cinema. So I must have left my house at about 3 in the afternoon. Film was going to start around 7 or 7:30 or something. So I had plenty of time. So I just walk in and just, meditating and chilling. And as I was walking, I got to a crossing, main road, zebra crossing. And as I was standing there waiting for the light to turn green, I noticed out of my peripheral vision on my right side that there was a elderly Jake lady. She might have been a Benjamin, I'm not sure. But I saw her at the right side of my peripheral vision. I didn't think too much at first, but she was walking slowly, and she had these really big dark sunglasses on, and she had this stick. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen, but when people have diminished eyesight, or maybe they're partially blind, they have that stick that they use to they run it along the ground to feel when there's like a bump in the curve or a step or something. She had the big dark glasses and that stick, so I perceived that maybe her vision wasn't 100%. And before I could really reflect on that, because I was just minding my own business, she says to me, "Excuse me, young man, excuse me." So I turned around and she says, I wonder if you can help me, please. And I said, "Sure, what's the matter?" She goes, "I can't see very well, could you please help me to cross the road?" So I said, "Okay, yeah, of course." So I basically offered her my arm, and she took a hold on it, and she says, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I'm really," and she had like that kind of like, she seemed like she was really distressed. She says, "I'm really sorry, but I had an operation on my eyes yesterday, on my left eye, and I woke up this morning and my only good eye, my right eye, I can't see out of it very well. It's all squiggly, and like I need to go to the chemist to get my medication, but I can hardly see." And immediately my heart went out to her, because some years ago, my mother had to have an operation on her eyes because she had developed cataracts. and she had developed this cataracts quite early on in life. In terms of when people usually get them, she got them relatively early, if that makes sense. Like most people get them when they reach a certain age. She got them a bit earlier. So my mum had to have surgery on her eyes. And when she had the surgery on her eyes, the surgery, what was it? I can't remember if it was her left or her right eye. But one of the eyes, the surgery didn't go too well. And there was a period where my mum kept going back and forth to hospital to have corrective surgery and stuff. And there was a possibility that she might have lost the sight in her eye. Now, thankfully, obviously through a lot of prayers and the mercy of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh, my mum didn't completely lose sight in one of her eyes, but the vision never returned to 100%. So, you know, all praises to Yahweh Hashem Yahweh for delivering my mum from blindness, but her vision was never 100% again in one of her eyes, and obviously that meant that you know, sometimes she'd have to ask me, like in certain, like, could you read this for me, or I can't see this, can you do this for me, or you know, little things. Obviously I was always glad to help and support her where I could, because the scriptures do say, honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days on the earth may be long. So it wasn't a problem for me to you know, help her where I could. But the point is that I understood what that kind of what the woman who asked me to help her cross the road, I immediately understood the kind of distress she might have been going through, saying that she, you know, just had an operation on her eye, and the only good eye she had now, she couldn't see out of it very well, and she's seeing squiggly lines in it and stuff. So she was very distraught. So, as I said, I offered her my arm, and she grabbed onto it, and when the light turned green, I walked her across the road. Now, the chemist that she needed to go to get her medications is the chemist that I'm actually a customer of, a patron of, or if that's the word to use. So I walked her to the door, and I says, okay, and I opened the door, and as I walked in, I heard the Spirit say to me, don't leave just yet. She may need more help. Stay here and see and make sure she gets her medication. Okay, right? So I was like, I listened to what the Spirit said to me, and I walked her to the counter, and she started explaining her situation to the, I guess you call it the chemist, innit? And the lady working at the chemist, at least, and she says, like, okay, what's your name? What's your date of birth? Let me see if we've got the medication for you. And while the chemist lady went and was looking for it, I thought about leaving. And then the Spirit said to me again, no. Make sure she gets her medication that she needs before you leave. Right? So just stay and watch. So I stood back and I was watching. Eventually the chemist came and they said, okay, we've got this for you. And she was putting it in a bag and stuff, because with the chemist they have to make the labels and everything. And I guess you Americans would call it pharmacy. Over here we call it, you know, going to the chemist. What you brothers in America would call a pharmacy, over here in the UK we call it a chemist. But anyway, well, we do call it a pharmacy as well. You can call it both. But so the lady behind the counter was putting the items in a bag, and she was ringing it up on a till. And the Spirit said to me, I bet this lady's card's going to be declined. Watch and see. Right? That's what the Spirit said to me. Stay and watch, because the lady's card's going to be declined. So the lady went to pay for the items, and she's got the she had her card with her. Now it's the tap and pay thing, isn't it? Where you tap your card, chip and pin, that's what it's called. You tap your card on a card reader and it registers, right? And you get your payment and take your items. But when the lady was pressing it on the chip and pin, it kept going, like, making a decline sound. She tried it twice. And I was watching the lady who had the partial blindness, and I could see she was getting distraught about it, because obviously she was already in a distressed state, and more complications on top of the stress she was already experiencing. you could say it's like, the straw that breaks the camel's back. She was getting really like worried and stuff. And the lady behind the counter, the chemist, says, "Oh, your card's not being accepted. Do you have cash?" And the partially blind lady was like, "Oh, no, no, that's all I've got. I've only got my card." And the spirit said to me, "Pay for her." So I says, "Don't worry, I'll help you." So I pulled out my card. I says, "Look, put it on my card." So I paid the price of the medication for the lady. And she's like, "Oh, thank you, young man. That's so kind of you." I'm like, "No, it's fine, because as I said, from the minute I walked into the chemist, the spirit had said to me, stay and make sure she gets the medication she needs. So even throughout the whole interaction, the spirit was telling me a few steps ahead of what was going to happen. Like, her card's going to be declined. She's going to get upset. So it's kind of like I was seeing the world in, how do you say it? It's like there was a bit of lag. Like, when you play a video game and you press a button and there's a bit of lag, and a few seconds later the button executes and the thing that should have come out immediately comes out a little bit later because of the latency lag. It was kind of like the spirit was telling me a few moves ahead what was going to happen, and I was seeing it play out in real time, but I'd already been given a heads up. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. So the lady got her medication, and I says, "Okay, let me help you out," right? So she took hold of my arm again, and I led her out of the chemist. And as we got back, I says, "You're gonna need help crossing back, because I'm guessing you're gonna have to go back across the road to go home. So I help you across the road again." And she goes, "Oh, I've got to go to the doctor's because I'm supposed to be meeting my son. He's supposed to meet me at the doctor's surgery, so I've got to go to the doctor's." Now, the doctor's surgery wasn't far. It was back across the road and a little bit further down. So I says, "Okay, I'll take you there." So she goes, "Oh, thank you." And then she started, like, she was almost like she was going to cry, because she's like, "I'm so sorry. I feel so stupid because, like, I woke up this morning and I couldn't see, and, this went wrong, and, and now I'm just really like, I'm really, I feel really silly." That's what she said. Now, this is interesting because I've experienced this before with women as well, with my mum and also with other women, just generally, like, when a woman gets into a certain state where it happens typically with illness that I've experienced, but I suppose it can happen with other things. But, like, there's sometimes when a woman gets upset because she feels like too vulnerable. Like, I guess it's like sometimes, like, when you're a child and you need your parents to help you with this, or you need help with that. When you're a grown person, you don't really want to have to be depending on people too much, because I suppose you kind of feel you should be self-sufficient. And I've experienced this with some women sometimes, where they've been forced into situations where they've had to turn to someone for help, and then as a result of that, they feel silly because they feel like they're weak, and then they start to berate themselves a bit. And that's what I perceived in this lady who was partially blind. She started to have that kind of like, she was berating herself for being like, I feel so silly because, I feel like she didn't say that verbally, but her words were conveying the fact that she felt emotionally distressed, and that she was a burden to people. And she was apologizing. She says, "I'm taking up your time." I said, "No, no, it's fine. I've got plenty of time. I'm not in a hurry to go anywhere. Let me take you to the doctor's." So we went back across the road, and she was holding on to my arm, and I walked a bit further down to where the doctor's surgery is. And as we got to the door, I was about to push the door open, and the spirit said to me again, "Don't leave just yet. Right? Make sure she goes into the doctor's and that she gets seen." So in my head, I was like, "Can't." So as I opened the door to the doctor's surgery, immediately there was some shit taking place in there, where there was a guy that was clearly had mental health issues, and he was basically blowing up in there, as some brothers might say, popping off, but he was basically shouting really loud and banging on the because where the doctors, you got the receptionist, they've got like these sort of like plastic screens where barriers to between them and the people, and the guy was banging on it really loudly and shouting like, "I need what I need," or "You got to give me what I want," or some shit like that he was saying. Now, as soon as I opened the door and I saw this guy, I heard him getting aggy in there, getting aggressive and stuff. The lady who was holding onto my arm immediately heard, I felt her grip tighten on my arm, because she obviously heard the hostility of this man, and you got to remember that this lady couldn't see very well. And the interesting thing about it, when one of your senses diminish, you start to rely on your others. Like, for example, uh, if your sight isn't so great, you got to, if your sight isn't great, you got to learn to rely on your ears a bit more. Or if your hearing's not great, you got to rely on your sight a little bit more. For example, if you can't hear very well, you start watching people's mouths to see the shapes they make, so you can kind of try and see what people are saying because you can't hear them too well. Likewise, if you can't breathe very well out your nose, you have to rely on your mouth more. So it's like when one sense goes, your other senses kind of get amplified. So this lady heard this guy shouting in there, and she immediately gripped onto my arm tighter because I could feel she was scared. Now, the interesting thing about it is that I didn't feel scared in myself, because to me the situation wasn't dangerous, because I assessed it as I walked in, and I looked at the guy, I looked at the dynamics of the room, and I in my mind I already knew, like, if this guy lunges at me or tries to attack me, I've got enough space to either move back, or if he does get close enough, I was confident that I'd be able to disarm him and subdue him, because I was in good. I'm currently in a position where I'm able to do that. My health is able to do that. And also, not to put too much of my business out there, but like I'm not a stranger to confrontation, and physical combat, because I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of domestic violence and domestic abuse, so I learned how to defend myself early on. So I'm quite confident in my ability. But I say all that to say this, is that there's been times where I haven't had my health in a position where I'm able to do that, and I've been vulnerable. So it's not like, this truth isn't about being a Hebrew Israelite tough guy. And this situation was a great example of that, because the Lord can put you in a situation where he takes all your strength. The things that you was once confident in, the Most High can take that away in an instant, and then you won't be so confident anymore. But thankfully, on that particular day, I was in a good health and able to, I felt confident that if that guy had come at me or tried to attack the lady, I could have both defended myself and her. But obviously the lady who couldn't see, she didn't know that. So she was scared because she heard this guy shouting and swearing and banging on the screen and everything, and just basically creating a scene. So, as I said, the Spirit said to me, stay with the woman until you're 100% sure that the doctors of the people at the doctor's surgery are taking care of her. So I stood there and watched this guy getting angry and stuff, and he's screaming about, I've been self-medicating. I've been self-medicating, and nobody's helping me, and I need to get what I need, and blah, 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 blah. And the guy's screaming and going off. And that's another thing as well, like people who have mental health issues, this, again, this is something I've been around a lot. And it's never a good sign when somebody is self-medicating. The term self-medicating goes into, like, for example, let's say people have certain health conditions, and rather than work with the program to try and find a good balanced uh, solution for their problem. Oftentimes, patients can be misdiagnosed with the wrong medications, or sometimes people actually take their own medications to cope with their problems. For example, you could say drinking is a form of self-medication. Like some people who have certain mental health issues, they may drink a lot because that helps them to cope with what they're experiencing. And for some people that can work and they can balance it, but sometimes they can go too far in the wrong direction where they start to have they create another problem in trying to solve the first one. So for example, let's say someone, I'm just going to use an arbitrary example here. This is just me making something up out of thin air. Let's say there's someone who hears voices. Yeah, they have auditory hallucinations. So they may find that, drinking alcohol stops me from hearing a particular voice. So let's say there's one particular voice they hear, and when they drink alcohol, they stop hearing that voice. But guess what? When they stop hearing that voice, they might start hearing 3 other voices, which might not sound so negative as the original voice, but then those voices might be compelling that person. Yeah, just have another drink. Just have another one. Just have another one. It's okay. Just have another one. So in self-medicating, they may have solved one problem only to open up a door to 3 others. And that's the danger of, self-medicating in a negative sense. And this is why the scriptures say know thyself. Let's get that one. Now, I'm not speaking about anybody in that example. That's just an example I just pulled straight off the top of my head. So, Oh, it's examine thyself, not know thyself. There you go. This is Sirach 18 and verse 20. Before judgment, examine thyself, and in the day of visitation thou shalt find mercy. And the example I gave there is an example of someone examining themselves. If someone was in that position where they were self-medicating in that manner, unfortunately, they'd be very lucky if they could find someone that could help them out of that maze. But if they are able to examine themselves and see, hang on a minute, this situation's causing that situation, what can I do to try and shift that to make it better? Then that person can grow in that situation, hopefully towards a more positive outcome. Because a lot of mental health issues are hard to treat because the person that you're trying to treat, there's a term that they use in the medical industry, it's called insight. People who suffer mental health issues, they're often rated in terms of their insight by doctors and psychologists. Now, the term insight means that how well does someone understand their own condition? Meaning that, like, for example, there may be certain things that trigger a person, emotional triggers. I'm not trying to get too deep on this, but I'm just trying to make a point here. Because this guy who was kicking off in there clearly didn't have insight into his condition. So he was just impulsive and reactionary and basically like a child. Because that's what children, like if something happens to children, they react. Usually they'll react, this happens, bang, that happens, bang. But really, as mature adults, we need to be more reflective. And sometimes, rather than reacting, sometimes ask yourself, why did this make me feel that way? Or why do I feel angry about this particular thing? Rather than just like, oh, this happened and now I'm angry. Examining thyself is like, okay, that hurt me, but why did it hurt me? And when you start to peel back the layers of the onion, you start to get a deeper insight into, okay, why does this bother me, or why does that upset me, or why does this cause me to feel that, or why does that cause me to feel that? And in doing that over a long period of time, you can begin to control yourself. Therefore, when you can control yourself, you're no longer at the mercy of you're not like a ship that's tossed to and fro, you wherever the waves take it. Then you start to have an emotional anchor. And when you've got an emotional anchor, you don't need to be moved, every which way. And any time this happens in life, you're getting bent up like a pretzel over it or that. Now, that's not to say things won't affect you or things won't bother you, but the point is that there's even a scripture which says this. Let's get the scripture. This is Proverbs 25 and verse 28. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. Meaning that if you've got no rule over your own spirit, you've got no self-control. And having no self-control is ultimately one of the greatest signs of emotional immaturity. So this guy that was popping off in the doctor's surgery, I assessed him in the spirit, and I could see that these things were going on. And he was being loud, but being loud doesn't make you... people think that being loud and shouting and acting angry makes people fear them. And in some cases it does, but in other cases it really shows ultimately the lack of self-control the person doing all the shouting has. Just because you're the loudest voice in the room doesn't mean that you're right. But oftentimes when people get loud, other people back down, and then that person will get their way. So therefore they'll think that they are right because they're the one that has the loudest voice. So anyway, all of that being said to say this, the woman who was holding into my arm started to grip it tighter because she was scared, because she could hear this man shouting. And the spirit said to me, stay with her until you're 100% certain that either her son comes or that the staff in there are taking care of her. And so as I was waiting and this guy was popping off, and this is the thing about demons, because this guy clearly had demons on him. He stops shouting and he goes to walk out the door. Then before he walks out the door, the demon jumps on him again. And then he comes back and starts shouting and kicking off again. So, that cycle went on for a few minutes. And eventually one of the people, the staff working at the doctor's surgery, came out and they says, okay, and they had open arms and they were ushering the lady that I was with to a seat. And they're like, it's okay, I'll take care of her. So I says, are you going to be okay? She goes, yeah, my son will come. He'll be here soon. So she goes, oh, but thank you so much, young man. You've been a real blessing to me. Thank you so much for your time and your patience. And I'm so sorry. I says, no. There's nothing to apologize for. It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. And so I left. Now, I'm telling that story because there's a lot of precepts that I want to bring out in light of this, because one of the things I wanted to make mention of is something that I've always felt, and this situation made it more clear to me. And I'll say this, right? One of the most precious gifts you can give a person is time in this life. Yeah, situations may happen. You may give someone money, and that may help a little bit. Or maybe someone might need food or clothing or something like that. Yeah, that's all good and well, but guess what? One of the things that's even more precious than any of those things is time. Because unfortunately, we can't solve people's problems sometimes. Sometimes people have sicknesses that we are unable to cure. So for example, I didn't have a magic wand in my back pocket that I could pull out and wave and take away this lady's partial blindness, unfortunately. So I couldn't fix that problem. But you know what I could fix? I could fix her emotional instability by being a point of stability in her life for that brief period of time that the Most High brought me into contact with her. So that's what I tried to be. Because, as I said, one of the most precious gifts you can give a person is time. So, for example, It started with her asking me only to help her cross the road, but by me giving her more of my time, I was able to help her in so many more situations, which on a regular day wouldn't be anything to most people. For example, most times, you're living your life, you're going about your day, you're going to work, or, you're doing your job, whatever it is you're doing. You go to a shop to buy a lunch, whatever. You go to tap your card's declined. Oh, well, no worries. Let me put it in the card reader and type the pin in. But when that happened to that lady who couldn't see that day, when her card was declined when she was trying to tap it, she couldn't put it in the reader to type her pin in because she couldn't see the number pad. So therefore she was getting all emotionally distressed, and to compound the issue even worse, she didn't have enough money in her wallet to buy the medication she needed. So therefore, by me taking the time to make sure that she gets what she needs and this, that, and the other, I was able to help her in a moment of distress. Now, this isn't me trying to big myself up to be like, oh, well, I'm so special and I do this, I do that. No. I'm just telling this story because I want to illustrate the point of the importance of giving people time. Let me get some precepts on this. Bear with me a second. I've got them marked out here. Let me just see where we're at. And what did it cost me? It didn't cost me anything. I wasn't in a hurry. Where was I in a rush to get to? So it was a pleasure to be able to help that person in their moment of distress. Now, bear me a second, just get this up. There you go. Now, someone could say, you know what? That's all good and well, but, you got to remember that, that woman's paying for her sins. The Most High smote her with that blindness because she's paying for her sins, whatever she's done in this life or in lifetimes past. Now, this is true. Micah 7 in verse 10, let me read this first. Micah 7 and verse 9, actually. It's Micah 7 and 9. Excuse me. Micah 7 and verse 9 says this: I will bear the indignation of the Lord because I have sinned against him. So the indignation of the Lord is against us, his people, because we sinned against him. The Most High didn't sin against us, we sinned against him. Now that was the lady I helped was an Israelite lady, Southern Kingdom. I don't know, maybe she's Benjamin. She seemed like Benjamin actually, but from the West Indies. But we've sinned against the Heavenly Father, right? This is true, right? However, there's also you got to put the balance, right? Let me read this and I'll read the next precept. I will bear the indignation of the Lord because I have sinned against him. Until he plead my cause and execute judgment for me, he will bring me forth to the light and I shall behold his righteousness. Cool, yeah? However, there's also this precept, right? Let me get John chapter 9. This is the book of John chapter 9, starting at verse 1. And as Yahushua passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? So the disciples, they knew about reincarnation. And they knew that you pay for your sins. You sin in one lifetime, the Most High may make you pay for it 3-4 lifetimes down the line. This is how the Most High works, right? So the disciples knew that. But guess what Yahushua said? Yahushua answered, neither have this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of the Most High should be made manifest in him. Meaning that man hadn't sinned to the point where the Most High smote with blindness as a result of his wickedness. Neither had his parents, which basically you are, you come back in your lot and you in the reincarnation. So it wasn't a result of either him sinning or, sometimes a parent might do something and their curse might be that they have to have a child that they have to, a child that basically needs, Not long-term, lifelong care. You know, a good example would be that woman, celebrity woman. What was her name? What do they call her? Is her name Katie Price? That's it. You know, she's got that son called Harvey, who is basically like he's got some learning difficulties, and he's like a giant baby. Like he still has the needs of a baby, even though he's a grown. He's at the age of a grown adult, but he still has a lot of dependency on his mother. That could be a curse to the person, you know, who had the child as well. Their curse might be that, yeah, you're gonna have a child that you're gonna have to spend the rest of your life, you know, cleaning up after them, feeding them like a baby, wiping their bottom, cleaning them their vomit, like they're gonna be a lifelong baby. That may be a punishment too. But the point is that Yahushua said this. He says, Yahushua answered and said, neither have this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of the Most High should be made manifest in him. And he says, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. So that whole situation, that man was born blind simply for the reason that he could run into Yahushua one day, and Yahushua could do the work that was set up from the foundation of the earth to do in restoring this man's sight. So sometimes it's not as clean cut as, oh yeah, well that person was wicked and that's how the Lord punished them. You know, it could be the case that the Most High made me bump into this woman to see how I would respond to it. And maybe that was the test. Would I be like, yeah, let me help this lady across the road, and yeah, I've got a dip now, see you later. You know, that whole situation, I believe, was a test from the Lord to see how compassionate can you be. You know, as I said, I say it again, sometimes the greatest gift you can give a person is time. Yeah, I'm not Yahushua, I can't heal this person's sight, but I can give her time. And that time, what was it, half an hour to me, may mean everything to her. So let me read more in this parable. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And when he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle. And he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay, and said unto him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. And he went his way therefore, and washed, and came seeing. The neighbours therefore, and they which before had seen him that was blind, said, Is this not he that sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. But he said, I am he. Therefore said they unto him, How were thine eyes opened? He answered and said, A man that is called Yahushua made clay, and anointed mine eyes, and said unto me, Go to the pool of Siloam, and wash. And I went and washed, and received sight. And they said unto him, Where is he? And he said, I know not. But this goes. Let me read on to this, right? Then they brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind, and it was the Sabbath day when Yahushua made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, He put clay upon my eyes, and I washed and did see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, This man is not of the Most High, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day. Others said, How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. They say unto the blind man again, What sayest thou of him that he hath opened thine eyes? He said, He is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and receiving his sight, until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son, whom ye say was born blind? How then doth he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know this is our son, and he was born blind. But by what means he now seeth we know not, or who hath opened his eyes we know not. He is of age, ask him, and he shall speak for himself. These words spake his parents because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Hamashiach, he should be put out of the synagogue. Therefore said his parents, said his parents, he is of age, ask him. Then again called they the man that was blind, and said unto him, Give God the praise, we know that this man was a sinner. He answered and said, Whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. They said unto him again, What did he to thee? How opened he thine eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, and ye did not hear. Wherefore would ye hear it again? Will ye also be his disciples? Then they reviled him and said, Thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that the Most High spake unto Moses, As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. The man answered and said unto them, Why herein is a marvellous thing, that ye know not from whence he is, and yet ye have opened my eyes. Now we know that the Most High heareth not sinners, but if a man be a worshipper of the Most High, and doeth his will, him he heareth. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of the Most High, he could do nothing. They said unto him, Thou was altogether born in sins, and dost thou teach us? And they cast him out. Yeah, they got cut by what the blind man said, because the blind man gave a good report of someone whose report they didn't want to believe. You know, they didn't want to believe in Yahushua, that he was the anointed, the Messiah, the one written to come. So therefore, when that poor blind man spoke well of Yahushua, they couldn't take it, and they cast him out. But going back to this situation I was talking about with this lady, and as the point of this lesson is, one of the greatest gifts you can give a person is time. Let's get the next precept. Because, and also another thing is as well that I'll say is that someone else could say, that woman having partial blindness, that was her cross and she's got to bear it. Well, yeah, that's true. But you've also got to remember that even Yahushua needed help in carrying his cross at points. Let's get that one. Everybody has their cross to bear, but sometimes the cross can be so heavy that they do need help. And sometimes it can be a case where the Lord might put a burden on a particular person. Or the Lord might put a burden on another person just to see how you'll respond to it. Like, for example, I say, Barakatha Yahabashim Yahushai, Thawadi Yahabashim Yahushai, for not smiting me with partial blindness. But that situation was put in my way to see how do you respond to this? See what I'm saying? It could be anything. You might meet someone who, someone asking you for change in the street, and you got a pocket full of change, which you're not really doing much with, and they say, "Oh, could you please help me to buy a sandwich?" Sometimes that's put there to see how are you going to deal with that. You're going to put your hand in the pocket and help the person, or you're going to be like, "Nah, can't help you, mate." Sometimes situations are put there really to test you and see what kind of what the caliber of your character is. Now, let's look up that word, caliber. I like this word a lot. What caliber of character do you have? The quality, caliber, and this is beautiful. This is beautiful because it reminds you of the story of King Arthur and the sword and the stone. What was the sword and the stone called? The sword was called Excalibur. So the word caliber is in the name of the sword, because in order to draw the sword from the stone, you had to have the right caliber of spirit. Now, the word caliber means the quality of someone's character, or the level of their ability, or the standard reached by something. There you go. So basically, in the story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, The sword that was stuck in the stone was called Excalibur, and everybody was trying to remove the sword from the stone because the legend had it that the person who removed the sword from the stone would be the one that would become the king. So, you know, he had all these men from across the land trying to draw the sword out of the stone. And, you know, he had these big strapping tough guys, you know, guys looked like they could, you know, fight 5 men at one time, you know, big burly guys, but they couldn't pull the sword out of the stone. But it happened to be that there was a young boy, as they might call a stripling, who nobody really esteemed as anything. His name was Arthur. And he was friends with Merlin, wasn't he? But it was him who was able to take the sword out of the stone. So that's how he became King Arthur, because he had the right quality of spirit, which the other men lacked. Yeah? So that's the word caliber and the meaning of it. So yeah, sometimes situations in life are put to you to see what kind of caliber of spirit you have, what kind of quality of character you have. All of these things are tests, because this whole life that we're living right now, it really is just one long test. And the test is to see whether you're going to pass or you're going to fail. And if you don't pass the tests, you don't pass the test. It's as simple as that. You know, everything is a trial of our faith, of our character, of our endurance. You know, this is all just one long test. See, the funny thing is that people in the world, they think that tests only apply when you're in a school classroom. Like, oh yeah, I'm doing maths and you've got the GCSEs coming up. I've got to revise, got to get my A's, got to get my B's, need to go to college, yeah. And they're cramming and they're revising because they think that the test just takes place on one day. Yeah, okay, on June 27th, you sit down for your maths GCSE. You know, everybody comes in, they puts their bags at the back, no calculators, no phones, you know, no talking, no. They think that the test was just on that one day, not realizing that the test started from the minute their spirit hit their mother's womb. And the test continues to the day that the Most High either takes your ass to the spiritual realm through death, or Yahushua comes and delivers us. The test never stops. It's ongoing. Yeah? But unfortunately, people who have the mindset of being indoctrinated into Esau's world, they think that the test was only when you're doing your GCSEs or your A levels or your degree or whatever it is. And as soon as you leave the education system, the tests stop. Nah, the tests never stop. Right? So this is Matthew 27, because I wanted to make a point. The point being is that, as I said, someone could say, oh yeah, well, that's her cross to bear. You know, she's got to bear it, right? Well, guess what? Even Yahushua needed help carrying his cross at points. This is Matthew 27 and 29. And when they had planted a crown of thorns, they put it upon his head, and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. And they spat upon him and took the reed and smote him on the head. And after they had mocked him, they took the robe off from him and put on his own raiment on him and led him away to crucify him. So Yahushua is carrying a cross from is it Jerusalem to Golgotha? He's traveling to Golgotha, right? Which is as I said, a place of the skull, which is the hill on which Yahushua was crucified, right? And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name, which would be Simeon, which I believe means affliction heard, if I'm not mistaken. Let's look that up. No. I don't want to get distracted. Actually, I can get in blue that. Because I've got something on deck that I want to get in the Google that I don't want to lose. So let me see if I can look it up this way. What was that? Matthew 9, 27, 29. Okay. Matthew 27, 29. That's not what I want. Matthew 27, 32. Okay. hearing.
Strong's G 4613. Simone. Simone.
They say Simone, but it should be Simeon. Outlining biblical usage. Simon. This is just heard here, hearing. Wait me a second. Yes, I was right. This is a Simeon name meaning. The name Simeon is of Hebrew origin and primarily means the Most High has heard. He who listens or hearing. There you go. So yeah, affliction heard. So in Yahushai's affliction, after he had been scourged by the Roman soldiers, which is he was beaten with rods and with the cat and nine tails and spat upon, and they put the crown of thorns on his head and smote him with the reed and stripped him naked and put that robe on him and beat him up and everything like that. Yahushua then had to carry his cross, and Simeon, being the one chosen to help the Lord, wasn't an accident or coincidence. It meant that Yahushua's affliction had been heard. So in that moment of Yahushua struggling to carry the cross, the Most High sent someone to help him. So my point being is that even Yahushua needed help carrying his cross at some points. And Yahushua, he was the greatest man to have ever walked the earth. You know, the second most powerful being in all of creation, even he needed help at certain points carrying his cross because it was more than he could bear. Now, when I googled this, Yahushua falling while carrying the cross, because in the movies they often show this scene playing out where you have Yahushua carrying the cross and he stumbles and he falls, and the Romans start shouting at someone out of the crowd to help him carry Yahushua carry the cross, and they pick out Simeon or Simon. In the movies, that's how they portray it. Yahushua falls over and they put someone at the crowd to help him. So I googled this, right? Bible verses on Yahushua falling while carrying the cross, and it says this, the AI. It says there's no specific Bible verses in the Gospels that describe Yahushua falling while carrying the cross. However, the four Gospels mention that Simon of Cyrene was forced to carry the cross for him, which implies Yahushua is physically unable to bear it. Let's read that again. There's no specific Bible verses in the Gospels that describe Yahushua falling while carrying the cross. However, the four Gospels mention that Simon of Cyrene, or Simeon, was forced to carry the cross for him, which implies Yahushua was physically unable to bear it. The Bible does not record the falls, or the tradition of Yahushua falling 3 times on the way to Golgotha comes from the Catholic devotional practice of the Stations of the Cross. Yeah, that's some Catholic bullshit. But the closest biblical events surrounding his physical collapse on the way include Matthew 27 and 32, which I just read, which we'll read again. It says, and as they went out, they found a man of Cyrene named Simeon, or Simon, whom they compelled to carry his cross. Luke 23 and 26. And as they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, who was coming from the country, and laid on him the cross to carry it behind Yahushua. Broader biblical reflection on the concept of stumbling or bearing heavy burdens, Christians often look to Psalms 37 and 24, which says, though he fall, he shall not be cast headlong, for the Lord upholds his hand, which is a good precept. But the point being is that everybody's got their cross to bear, but sometimes people need a little help in carrying it. So that lady, and that's another thing as well, when I finished dealing with that lady and she was seen by the doctor's surgery, she sat down. You know what she said? Oh, God bless you, young man. So I said, God bless you too, you know. Now, obviously, she didn't know the names Yahweh and Yahushai, but in her heart, and this is the thing, you know, when Jake gets sick, they tend to turn, even if Jake's worldly, when Jake gets sick and get humbled, you know, they tend to That they kind of know in their spirit they need to rely on God more because they can't rely on their own strength. And that's one of the dangers of youth. You know, in youth, when you're at your full strength, you feel like you're unstoppable. And then you got all the energy in the world to run around and do this and run around and do that, and you're confident in your own strength. But just let the Lord lay a little illness upon you, or maybe let the Lord lay a little bit of age upon you, and you're not so fast, you're not so strong. Maybe you do need help. Maybe you're not so confident in your abilities. Maybe you're really good at something. You know, maybe you can walk confidently. Well, let's have a situation where the Most High takes your equilibrium away from you and you can't walk so confidently anymore. Let's see how proud you're going to be then. See, that's the flip side of illness. There's a good side to illness, and the good side to the illness is that it brings you more humble. And when you're humble, you know that you need to rely on the Lord more than your own self. And that's one of the beauties that comes out of being sick. However, when Edomites get sick, they never learn that lesson because their heart is far from the Lord, so they can't return unto him. But usually, you know, when Jake get a little bit sick, they tend to want to turn to the Lord a bit more. Even if they're bugged out and Christians or whatever, you know, and they're calling on God or Jehovah, they might not know the truth, but they know that, like, what does the scripture say? Jake has a zeal for the Lord. Let's get that. But not according to knowledge. Romans 10 and verse 2:5, bear them record that they have a zeal of the Most High, but not according to knowledge. See, the woman blessed me in the best way she could. She said, God bless you, young man. And I just accept it for what it is. But in truth, I'm just glad that she was able to get the help that she needed, because, as I said, my heart went out to her because I could empathize with what she was going with, because I understand what my mum went through when she was in that situation. So that's why I kind of had so much empathy for her. That's another good word I want to get into, empathy, because that's a very core skill that's needed in this truth. See, this truth is not about being the Israelite tough guy. You know, some people get it twisted where they think being a Hebrew Israelite is about going out on the streets, puffing out your chest, acting all tough, shouting at the top of your voice, cursing at the white man, acting like what does they call it? Acting like you're Dr. Angry Man. I'm sure none of you will get that reference because that's a very obscure reference, but I'll put it in a better way. Acting like you're Mr. T, B.A. Baracus, right? You know, giving everybody screw face. You know, everything you're ready to blow up at the drop of a hat. That's not what this truth is really about. Yes, we do go out on the streets. Yes, we do confront our enemy, and we are supposed to prophesy against them. The scriptures do say in Isaiah 58 and verse 3, I believe, cry aloud and spare not. Lift up thy voice as a trumpet and shew my people their transgressions. Yeah, that is a big part of what being a Hebrew Israelite, or I should say being a prophet, is about. But there's also the flip side, where we have to show compassion, and we have to show mercy, we have to show kindness, and we have to show grace. These are all important parts of the ministry too. Now, empathy is a skill that's very hard for people to learn if they didn't learn it early in life. There's two flip sides to this coin. Two roads a person can choose to take. A fork in the road, one might say. And unfortunately, people choose the wrong fork in the road in many cases. What I'm trying to say is this. When you're growing up as a child, you're going to encounter a situation where you can take one of two roads. You can take the empathetic route, or you can take the jealous route. Now, what is the empathetic route? The word empathy means this. Empathy. The ability to understand and share the feelings of another. right? If you take the root of empathy, that means that you'll try and put yourself in someone else's place. Now, there's a really great song that I'm going to make mention of here. A really great song by Kylie Minogue. It's called Put Yourself in My Place. I can't remember who wrote it, but Kylie Minogue didn't write it. She was just a singer. But the lyrics of the song are great because it's like the whole point of the song is like, put yourself in my place, in that someone who's looking down on another person as if that person's not nothing. Yeah, that's the lyrics of the song. The lyrics of the song are I know the circle's gonna come around. You better put yourself in my place. You know, when your lovers bring you down, when the whole world brings you down, when there's no one else around, you better put yourself in my place. So like I'm quoting the lyrics, but I'm not singing it, so it might sound a bit strange. But yeah, the whole point of the song is about the person who looked down on someone else being put in that person's shoes. And that's what empathy allows you to do. Empathy is a very, very powerful life skill because it allows you to understand what someone might be going through. And in doing that, you can help to share that person's affliction because you can put yourself in their place. Now, the opposite of empathy is jealousy. Let's look up jealousy. Jealousy, the state of feeling of being jealous, meaning resentments. This doesn't go into it. Let's go into it, man. Let's see. Right, jealous, as in possessive and suspicious. Okay, I don't want to go into sexuality or romance, but let's use the first two words here, possessive and suspicious, meaning that someone might look at someone and be like, well, why do they have that, not me? What they have should be mine. They don't deserve it, I deserve it. Well, empathy would prevent you from thinking that way. Jealousy will incline you to think that way even more. And the more you entertain jealousy, the more it rots at your own heart. And the more it makes you cold towards what other people are going through. Because the more jealous you become, the less you're able to accept that that person who may have something that you may find desirable, that they actually earned it. Because a jealous person doesn't want to acknowledge that that person who they see with what they have actually deserves what they have. So jealousy warps a person's perception and it leads them down a path of deception, and it coldens one's heart. It darkens one's heart so that when they encounter someone who may need sympathy or empathy, they can't give it because they've become cold and darkened by their own the spirit of jealousy that's festered within them. Now this ties me into another precept, which is what was I saying? Oh, this is the one. I've got it on deck here. This is the one. This is Matthew 24 and verse 12. Just looking it up, forgive me. Matthew 24 and verse 12. And it says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. See? So because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. See, a lot of people, they don't have compassion or empathy like that. And that's why their love waxes cold, because oftentimes they've entertained seducing spirits which have darkened their heart to prevent them from being able to show or give the level of empathy that a situation may require. Now, what's the next precept I've got on deck here? Oh, this is a good one. This is Matthew 5. Starting at verse 41. As I said, one of the most precious gifts you can give a person is time. And that's what that lady needed. Unfortunately, I couldn't restore her eyesight, but I was able to comfort her in her distress. And again, that isn't to say that, oh, I'm so special and I'm trying to blow smoke on my backside. No, I'm just using this as a teaching point for the fact that sometimes people need help. And if you're in a position to help, if you can, This is Matthew 5 and 41. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile with him, go twain. So that lady only compelled me to help her go across the road, but it turned out that what could have just been, a minute and a half crossing her across the road turned into half an hour or maybe 40 minutes, maybe 25 to 30 minutes, I'd say 25 to 30 minutes. But what did that cost me? I had what is it? Like the song at the conclusion of the James Bond film, which is actually my favourite James Bond film, which is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The song by Louis Armstrong plays, "You've Got All the Time in the World," which is actually ironic if you actually watch the conclusion of that film. But that's that song, "We've Got All the Time in the World." Well, guess what? On that day, I did have all the time in the world that the Most High had allotted to me, and I was able to spend it with that lady, which was a blessing to her and also a blessing to me, because it was actually it felt nice to be able to see that she got what she needed, But the next precept is another thing is that someone may say, as I said before, well, look, man, that was her cross to bear because she's paying for whatever iniquity she's done in this lifetime or lifetimes past. That's her punishment, and she's got to carry her cross by herself. Well, sometimes, as I pointed out in the previous scripture, even Yahushua needed help carrying his cross. So sometimes people do need help, and we should be compassionate to help them where we can. This is 2 Ezra 14. I want to make a point. 2 Ezra 14, starting from about verse 17, maybe a few verses up. This is and another thing someone might say is like, oh well, like let's say someone's catching hell and they're really in a bad situation, and someone might say to them, oh well, you got to gird up your loins, gird up your loins like a man, and you've got to remember what Job went through. Yeah, Job is a great example of catching hell and catching affliction. One of the best testimonies of overcoming adversity in the scriptures outside of Yahushua's, what Yahushua overcame. Job is a great example of enduring bad times, catching hell. It's a great testimony of holding fast to your integrity, even in the midst of adversity. Yeah. But with that being said, Job, the book of Job is one of the oldest books in the Bible. And what you have to understand is that we aren't on Job's settings. That was back in times when men were living, ages of Methuselah, like kind of, 969 years. Men were stronger. The earth was stronger. Everybody was stronger. So the level of affliction that Job caught was proportionate to his time, because his body could take much more than we can. We've waxed weaker through age. Compare 969 years of living to a measly 70. That's minuscule in comparison. And that is an example of how much weaker we've become. The whole earth has been weakened through age, right? This is 2nd Ezra 14, starting at verse 17. For look how much the world shall be weaker through age, so much more shall evils increase upon them that dwell therein. Yeah, so that the whole earth has become weaker. So we're not on Job's settings. Job got through what Job got through because it was proportionate to his, first of all, his spirit, the spirit he had, and also what, the body could take at that time. Now, that isn't to say that we can say, oh, well, yeah, we're not supposed to catch hell. No, we are supposed to catch hell, but what I'm trying to say is give the balance, There's another scripture on this that I want to get. This is, I had it before. Let me guess. I didn't screenshot it, right? Okay, cool. I'll find it. It's in 2nd Ezra, the 6th chapter. Let's see. Actually, I had it in my... I'll mark the page here. Cool. So, like, I'm working with a few different Bibles here. So I marked it in the page, but I didn't write down where it was. Right, 2nd Ezra 5 and 52. Okay, cool. Let's go there. Book of 2nd Ezra chapter 5. Let's start from verse 50. Let's start from 46 to give this some context. So I'm going to read into the point a bit, okay? Point's a bit further down, but I'm going to read up into it. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 5, starting at verse 46. And he said unto me, ask the womb of a woman, and say unto her, if thou bringest forth children, why does thou it not together, but one after another? Pray her therefore to bring forth 10 children at once. And I said, she cannot, but must do it by a distance of time. Then said he unto me, he being the angel Uriel, right? Then said he unto me, even so have I given the womb of the earth to those that be sown in it in their times. For like as a young child may not bring forth the things that belong to the aged, even so have I disposed the world which I created. And I asked and said, seeing that thou hast given me the way, I proceed to speak before thee, for our mother, of whom thou hast told me that she is young, draweth now nigh unto age. And he answered me and said, this is the point I want to get to, right? Ask a woman that beareth children, and she shall tell thee. Say unto her, wherefore are unto they whom thou hast now brought forth like those that were before, but of less stature? See? So that proves that we're not of the same stature that we were of in years past. Likewise, when a woman is young and fertile, the children that she's going to bring forth tend to generally be stronger. Whereas when a woman gets up in age now, where she's reaching the end of their prime period of her fertility, for example, some of these women that are up in their 30s now and they're trying to conceive children, they're having a hard time because they're not as fertile as they once were, say from the ages of, let's say, from 16 to 25 or whatever. I haven't checked those figures. It's just an arbitrary number I'm pulling out of my head on a guess. But, I would guess that women between the ages of 16 to 25, that's one of their most fertile periods. On the flip side of that, you're looking at a woman who's like 35 to 45, she's much less fertile, So my point being is that, yeah, the world has aged. We've waxed weaker through age and through sin. Because you've got to remember that sinning after sinning after sinning after sinning, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, all it is just bringing us nearer and nearer to death, because the wages of sin is death. You know, that's why we need to be changed from the bodies we have now and to receive those immortal bodies so that we can be free from the curse of sin and regain the strength that we once had at the beginning of creation. Yeah? Because we've fallen. And that term fallen, just looking at, like, if something's fallen, it means it's not in the high position it once was at. For something to fall, it's got to, trying to use the words here, it's got to be of a lower estate than it was at its previous point. Like if a book falls off the bookshelf, it means it's no longer on the shelf it was once on, it's fallen to the floor. Like when something increases, you don't say it's fallen, you say it's increased. When something's decreased, it's fallen. It's no longer at the level it was once at. So yeah, the point being is that we're not in a Job setting. So the hell that we catch, it may seem light in comparison to what Job experienced, but that doesn't diminish the fact that hell is hell. I've read that, so I'm just looking at my list of precepts here, seeing which points I haven't covered. Bear me a second. Is there any more other points I wanted to make? Yeah, about time, the gift of time. This 1 John 3, verse 16. Hereby perceive we the love of the Most High, because he laid down his life for us, that we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. But whoso hath this world's good, and seeth his brother have need, and shutteth up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of the Most High in him? Yeah, so again, the gift of time. Yeah, sometimes you can't cure a brother's illness or their sickness. Let me use something. Let's say I'm just trying to pull arbitrary things out of the air. Let's say there's a brother who's got a really bad sickness, and he needs to be hospitalized, and you know, he's receiving the care. Let's say there's a treatment plan that if they follow the plan, they'll be well, but it's going to take them 8 months to go through that period. You can't go to the brother and say, okay, well, here's £10, see you later. Like, that's not going to solve the brother's problem, is it? Yeah, okay, that might help him buy food for today, but the bigger problem is that he's got to go through 8 months of hell, maybe psychological hell, physical hell, mental hell, which again is psychological hell. He's got to endure 8 months of that. So how can you help this person? Well, one of the ways you can help them is by being supportive, you know? And how do you be supportive? Well, by giving the person time. Like, you can't wave a magic wand and heal them instantly, but guess what? You can help them when they're at their lowest state by being supportive. And that comes through giving the gift of time. Now, I say that to say this because even Job had friends that spent time with him in his affliction. It's the book of Job, chapter 2. All right, let's read the whole chapter because it's good. Again, there was a day when the sons of the Most High came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord, meaning that Satan is indeed a son of the Most High. He is an angel that just works on the left-hand side, but he's always doing the will of the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, from whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. So that means that angels go to and fro in the earth, and they walk up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth the Most High and escheweth evil? And still he holdeth fast to his integrity, even though thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. Again, this is a cut for you Christians who say that, oh, well, Satan's at war with God, and, you know, Satan's the one that kills people and does this and does that. No, 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 no. Satan only does what he's sanctioned to do. The Most High kills people. The Most High gives the hit to the angel. Like, okay, I'm tired of this nigga. Put his ass in the spiritual realm. And, you know, sometimes the Lord has counsels, right, to decide how to do it. You know, the Most High is very theatrical. He doesn't need to be, but he has things play out in a very theatrical way, both on earth and in the spiritual realm. So, you know, there's accounts where the Most High will have angels come forth and say, okay, who will persuade this? Let's say James from Tilbury, who's 42 and has a wife and 3 children, but he's been secretly stealing from his company's pension fund. How are we going to take James from Tilbury out, right? And you have angels come up on and saying on this manner and on that manner, and one angel may say, Lord, we'll give him a heart attack in his sleep. Another angel might say, Lord, we'll have him choke on his dinner while he's watching the EastEnders. Another angel may say, Lord, let's have a plane of glass fall out from a window and decapitate his ass as he's walking past. And the Lord might say, thou hast well said, go and do therefore. Next thing you know, James from Tilbury, he's walking down the road, checking his phone, checking his flipping NatWest banking app to see how much money he's got coming in from the pension fund he's been stealing from. Next thing you know, a pane of glass that's been installed at the window above him slips out of the workman's hand, falls down and decapitates his ass. That's the end of James from Tilbury. And that all happened because the Most High had it play out that way. You know? So, you know, the Most High is very theatrical. Anyway, back to the point, right? Where was I? Yeah, and behold, the Lord said unto Satan, behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So Satan could fuck Job up physically, but he couldn't kill him, right? So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. Then said his wife unto him, dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse the Most High and die. But he said unto her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of the Most High? And shall we not receive evil? And in all this did not Job sin with his lips. Now here's the point I want to get to, right? Because Job was catching all hell. His whole family had died. He had 10 children, 7 sons and 3 daughters. They all died. He lost his businesses. All of his cattle died. His servants that he had working for him, some of them died. He lost everything, right? All in a day as well. You know, again, Job was physically and mentally stronger than we are now because the earth has waxed weaker with age. But that doesn't mean we have to, that doesn't give us an excuse to cop out. Now, I'm not saying that gives us an excuse to cop out. We have to keep fighting to the best of our ability, but we're not on them settings. It's like saying someone's going to do a fast. Yeah, I'm going to fast, yeah? Okay, you're going to do a fast. How long are you going to fast for? Yeah, I'm going to do 40 days and 40 nights. Yeah, I'm going to be like Moses, man. I'm after man like Moses. And we could give him a correction. You could say, well, you know what? Technically, Moses fasted for 80 days. Because he's done 40 days and 40 nights once. But when he came down, the children of Israel were worshipping the golden calf. And Moses got pissed off and smashed the 2 tablets of stone. And then he went back up the mountain again for another 40 days and 40 nights and came down again. But like, let's just say 40 days and 40 nights, right? Or using the example of Yahushua fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. And guess what? When Yahushua fasted for those 40 days and 40 nights, who came to tempt him? Satan. So it's like the deeper you go in the spirit, the more Satan's going to try and fuck with you, because what happened with Job is that when he lost everything he had, he was already a man that feared the Lord, and, you know, he was always offering up sacrifices for his children, just in case they did perhaps, you know, think something foolish that the Lord might punish him for. Job was always sacrificing on their behalfs. What am I trying to say here? I lost my train of thought. Forgive me. Let me just recapture it. I lost my train of thought. Forgive me. Job was always praying that the Lord would have mercy on him. I completely lost my train of thought. Forgive me. Oh, right. Yeah, we're not on Job settings. We're not currently on Job settings. Yeah, so we have to do the best that we can with what we've got. We have to do the best of what we can with what we've got. And that means we can't give up the fight. But there's times when the fight's going to lick you on your ass, man. Like, nobody enjoys a boxing match, right? Where nobody hits the canvas. Nobody lands a strong hit. Like, everybody's just like, light taps. No strong hits. Nobody enjoys a fight like that. The fight people enjoy the most is where someone gets rocked on the jaw with a jaw-shattering uppercut, and they go on the canvas, and the count is like 1, 2, and when it gets to 8 seconds, the person stands up, they shake themselves off, and they get back in the fight. That's what people want to see. That's what the Most High wants to see. The Most High doesn't put adversity on our shoulders to break us, although it does break a lot of people. But really, the Most High wants to put weight on your shoulders to knock you on your ass so that you can get up again. But the point is, the Most High wants to see you on your ass. And when you're on your ass, it doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look pretty to people walking around. Like, if you was to just take a snapshot of a boxing match, right? And someone just got hit with an uppercut or a right cross and it hard, and they're on the canvas, right? They're on their back, and the ref's counting. If someone just took a snapshot of that one moment and thought, oh well, yeah, this person, he's always just on his ass, isn't it? That would be a warped perception of the whole story, because there was a prelude to that event, and there was also how do you say, an ending that you haven't yet seen. But if you was to just take, oh, well, that guy's on his ass or that woman's on his ass, and they're just weak. Well, you're not looking at the totality of the event or the situation. But that's how the Most High see things, because the Most High doesn't see as men see. Men look on the outward, but the Most High looks on a person's heart. So the Most High already knows what somebody can accomplish before they've ever accomplished it. Just like with King David. People looked at King David like he was nothing because they thought he was nothing, because he's just someone who was a young boy keeping sheep. Little did they know that in private, David had been slaying lions and bears. So when it came to taking down Goliath, David was already well versed and experienced in that. But people hadn't seen that. So when he took Goliath out, it was a shock to them. They couldn't believe it. It was like, whoa, how in the hell is this young man of no rank killed this mighty man of war in a perfect victory? Perfect in the Street Fighter 2 sense of perfect, or dare I say Mortal Kombat sense of flawless victory. David took Goliath out in a flawless victory, but David had rehearsed prior to that, but nobody saw it because it took place in private. Not everything that takes place in a person's life takes place in front of eyes. I'll say this, right? There's a saying. Nobody sees when you lose when you're playing solitaire. That card game solitaire that people tend to play by themselves? Nobody sees when you lose when you're playing that, because you're alone. But the fact of the matter is that you're playing the game and you're getting better at it. But nobody sees those private trials and tribulations that people go through. Anyway, let's just finish up this point, because I got a bit sidetracked. Let's get back to Job, right? Because as I said, one of the most precious gifts you can give a person is time. And even though Job was going through hell, even he had friends that spent time with him. This is the point here. This is Job 2 and verse 11. Now, when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him, they came every one of them from his own place, Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zoar the Namthonite. Now, these were all Israelites, by the way. Don't get it twisted like, oh, these are some other nations. No, they're all Israelites. When it says Eliphaz the Temanite, it just means that he was from that land, like from the land of Teman, and Bildad the Shulamite and Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. So Job had 3 friends in his affliction who came to mourn with him and comfort him. As I said, one of the most precious gifts you can give in this life is time. See, they couldn't fix Job's curses. They couldn't bring back his children from the dead. They couldn't stop him from suffering from the boils that were plaguing him. They couldn't make his wife stop despising him. But guess what they could do? They could give him the gift of their time and their support. Right? And when they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept, and they rent everyone his mantle and sprinkled dust upon their heads towards heaven. Here's the point. So they sat down with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great. So how many people in this day and age would be prepared to spend 7 days and 7 nights sitting in silence with a person just to comfort them? Now, it does happen. You know, sometimes you may have a relative that's sick and they're bedbound and you need to take care of them. And you will give up your time and you'll sit with them. And you'll take care of their needs. But in most cases, that's a very rare thing. Because unfortunately, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many is waxed cold. And sadly, most people are too preoccupied with their own lives and what they've got going on than to spare time to help someone else who might be suffering and may need time. Again, you might not be able to fix a person's problems, but you can comfort them through grieving with them, or just giving them time to maybe talk about their problems. You know, there's a reason why in Esau's world, when someone is struggling with mental health problems, oftentimes they assign them something. You know what that is? It's called talking therapy. Because sometimes just talking through problems helps people to process their pain. Because pain processing is a very important life skill. And that could be a whole topic for a lesson in itself. But I'll just say something briefly on this. Everybody experiences pain in life, but not everybody processes pain in the same way. Some people process pain in healthy ways, and some people process pain in very unhealthy ways. So learning how to process pain and not allow it to become unhealthy is a very important life skill, which unfortunately you're not going to learn in the public school system. I'm not going to go into that topic because that will have me talking for another hour, and I've already spent nearly 2 on this lesson. But the point of the lesson is emphasizing the point, one of the most precious gifts you can give a person is time. I'll finish on this precept. This is Matthew. Matthew 25, starting from verse 33. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. I read that again. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, this is Yahushua, right? Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me meat. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, When saw we thee a hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of these least of my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. Now that doesn't mean hell, as Christians would read it. There's no such place as hell where you burn in the ground under fire. It just means, going to torment, going to perdition, going to destruction, yeah? Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, going to a bad time. Hell, evil, hell, bad time. The word evil means a bad time. But hell is, lower state, or bad time. Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was a hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in. Naked, and ye clothed me not. Sick and in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee a hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not unto one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. There we go. It's like I tripping over my words. So yeah, that's the point. I made the point. I read the precepts I had listed here. Let's see, is there anything else I've got? No, read that. Oh, one more. No, two more. Isaiah 53 and verse 3. And this is the beauty of empathy, right? Empathy allows you to feel things that people are going through without actually having to experience them firsthand yourself. And that is a level of mental maturity that unfortunately a lot of people find it very hard to reach, because that's really emotional intelligence. And that level of intelligence isn't something that's open up to many. And that isn't me trying to, say that in a condescending way. It's just that's how wisdom works. Wisdom is like a chaste woman. She doesn't give all her secrets to just anybody. So you've got to have a certain caliber of character. Going back to that word caliber that I mentioned earlier, you've got to have a certain caliber of character to be cognizant of certain things, to be opened up to certain things, to understand certain things. Isaiah 53 and verse 3. Let me read from verse 1 for context. Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of dry ground. He have no form or comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Here's the point. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. You know what the beauty of going through situations like that is that it gave Yahushua the ultimate empathy. That's why he was able to relate to so many people on so many levels, because he could put his mind into what people were going through. He could relate. This is the word. He could relate. That's one of the things that the artist Prince, one of the words he used to drop a lot. Do you relate? Can you relate? Yahushua can relate to all people at all levels of all walks of life. He could mix it up with the rich people. He could mix it up with the poor people. He could mix it up with the people who were doing well, and he could mix it up with the people who were doing not so well in terms of their health, the sick, the poorly, the maimed. Yahushua could relate to all of them because he was a man acquainted with grief and sorrow, so he could empathize with them. Where are we? Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. We did esteem him stricken, smitten of the Most High, and afflicted. He was wounded, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. One more precept, and then I'll close out. Matthew 5. Matthew chapter 5. Start from verse 1. I'm going to read down to 10. I'm going to read all 10 verses. And seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So going back to that story, that lady who was partially blind, she was poor in spirit, you know. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. So yeah, that's a key point. If you want to receive mercy from the Lord, you've got to be merciful yourself. You know, when someone does something wrong to you, the level of mercy you show unto them, you know, will be proportionate to the level of mercy the Most High will show unto you. Because for all of sinned and fallen short of the glory, you know. There's another precept that I could go into. I'm not going to go into because I'll be talking here all day. But there's an account where there was a man that owed a certain amount of money. And he prayed to the king, oh, please release me on my debt. Right? And the king had mercy on him and he released him of his debt. But then it turned out that another man owed that man a little bit of money. And he beat the man up and demanded that he must pay everything that he owed immediately. And when the king heard what had been done, he went back and called the man that he had mercy on. And he threw that guy into prison because of his wickedness, because he never extended the same level of mercy he received unto the person who owed him money, even though he was in a similar situation himself. I'm just going to roughly paraphrase that. I'm not going to go there, but because I'd be talking all day, as I said if I did. But yeah, the level of mercy you show, you know, you got to remember that you're also seeking mercy too. You know, in terms of like the level of wrath or grace you show a person, you've got to remember that you're in need of grace and mercy too. So it says, where are we? Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see the Most High. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of the Most High. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I'll read 2 more. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. So yeah, you know, it's going to be times when people will have a bad thing to say about you. But guess what? That's all part of the journey. Because the servant isn't greater than his master. So all the things that they said of Yahushua, and a lot of the things Yahushua had to suffer, we that are following after Yahushua, the prophets of the Lord of the hopeful elect, you know, we're not greater than our master, so we're going to have to suffer a lot of those things too. So yeah, that's the point. I've been talking for a long time, but Lord willing, this was an edifying little testimony. Yeah, a lot of interesting lessons came out of that little interaction I had with that lady. And once again, this isn't me telling this story trying to big myself up like I'm something special. I'm not. I'm a sinner like everybody else. You know, I'm in need of grace and I'm in need of mercy, and I pray the Lord has mercy on me. You know, but it's just an interesting thing to make. The key points is that one of the most precious gifts you can give a person is time, and the second point is that you know, carrying a cross doesn't look pretty. You know, there's got to be times when people will fall. Sometimes people will need help in carrying their cross. But you know, so long as they're still moving, that's the important part. You know, you might have to lay on the floor and crawl on all fours, but keep moving. You know, again, it's like you know, if you look in nature, if you look at a snail, it might not look like it's moving very fast, but guess what? It's moving, and that's the point. It might take it longer to get to its destination than another creature would, but it gets there in the end. So yeah, just, you know, keep your head up, keep moving. Got to keep moving forward. That's the key point. And yeah, that's that, man. That's that. So Lord willing, that was an edifying lesson. Want to once again give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachakodash. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of great Muslim that rule well. And shalom unto the 144,000 elect men of the nation of Israel, and the rest of the elect that are destined to be saved. And I'll catch you on the next lesson, Lord willing. Shalom for now.